Hello and welcome back to My Safety Hub, your source for all things health and safety. I'm your host, Okert Furi. In today's episode, we'll be looking at the important issue with regards to health and safety in our educational institutions, be it universities, schools, or creches. Every day, hundreds of thousands of individuals and children visit these institutions to brighten up their minds and therefore to brighten up their futures. But how safe are they when they attend these institutions? We'll be looking at some of the challenges that these educational institutions face on a daily basis. Let's first ask the question as to why it's important that our schools, universities or creches or any other educational institution for that matter would need to provide a safe space for our individuals or children to learn and brighten up their minds. First of all, it's a legal requirement. The Occupational Health and Safety Act makes it clear that any place of work needs to be safe and free from risk so that any person, therefore any child or student or faculty member, would need to be protected from any source of harm that may exist. Secondly, it's a question with regards to morals or morality. When working with a host of individuals and not only looking after educating them and therefore brightening up their minds, we also have to consider that learning can only take place effectively if that space where the teaching is taking place is actually safe. The last question or last point that we need to consider in this regard, which is why these educational institutions need to provide a safe space for education to actually happen, is with regards to ethics. Every teacher in South Africa has to undertake an oath whereby they swear that they will stand in the place of the parent and therefore look after the well-being of the child whilst they are being educated at school. This means that we're not only looking at the child's minds and growing their knowledge, but we have to look at their safety as well. Therefore, from an ethical point of view, for me personally, it's the largest point that we need to consider. And if we do this properly, therefore, if we look at after the ethical question properly, we will be looking after the legal as well as the moral question in terms of the importance of health and safety at school or every other educational institution properly. Let's have a look at some of the top challenges that these educational institutions face quite regularly. First of all, asbestos management, contractor management, educational visits, fire safety, infection control, manual handling of equipment or articles, stress management, traffic management, violence and aggression, and lastly, working at heights. Naturally, every one of these challenges will have its own intricate complexities due to the nature of work or tasks or activities that are taking place within them. Let's have a look at the first challenge faced by educational institutions, namely asbestos management. Being 2024, you would think that asbestos is a thing of the past within our workplaces, especially educational institutions. Unfortunately, as it now stands, there are at least 32 schools in Gauteng alone that are still struggling with the challenge of managing asbestos properly within the premises. The first step to manage the exposure or possible exposure towards asbestos is the proper identification of the hazard itself, which means that a proper risk assessment or survey would need to be conducted on the premises by a seasoned professional. Once the necessary information has been gathered, a proper structure or sequence of events need to be put into motion to eliminate or remove the asbestos properly from the property by professionals that are licensed to do so. Next on the list is contractor management. Now, contractor management has to do with the management of any other company or institution or person that are performing work on your behalf, and therefore they need to be remunerated as such. Within the landscape of occupational health and safety, contractor management has to do with the agreement between the employer and the contractor themselves, as an employer themselves as well, that would need to manage health and safety in such a way that work can be performed safely, not only for the employees performing the tasks or the activities themselves, but for any other person that may be affected by those tasks or activities on the premises. Naturally, things that would need to be considered in this regard is not only the health and safety file of the contractor, but also what we call a 37.2 agreement, according to South African legislation at least. Also, we need to make sure that proper vetting takes place in looking after the contents of the health and safety file itself, to make sure that the persons performing the work are competent to do so, which alludes to training. But naturally, we also have to make sure that a risk assessment is properly conducted by the contractor for the work or specific tasks that they would need to carry out. Further to this, if any listed work needs to be carried out, we have to consider any permits to be issued to the contractors for the work to be done safely. Next on the list is educational visits or excursions. Now, this is particularly applicable to schools, especially primary and high schools, where the children are taken to other facilities for sports or recreational purposes. Now, if you are a South African, you'd be aware of the incidents that have taken place of late, where children have drowned in rivers, vehicle accidents that have taken place on highways or roads where buses have fallen over and individuals were hurt or killed. This is not only applicable to South Africa, it's applicable to any country. But specifically focusing on South African legislation and the responsibilities of educators and the other staff members that have a role to play, including those of contractors who may be operating the buses themselves. Making sure that these vehicles are safe for use is the first step. Having a look at some of the documentation that would need to be reviewed for the excursions to take place safely, we will need to look at the health and safety compliance of the facilities that we are visiting as well. With this, I would suggest that the facilities be visited beforehand and a thorough inspection of the facility be conducted, and then also that the necessary documentation from the facility be supplied to you so that you can ensure that all the necessary legal requirements in terms of health and safety have been carried out. We also have to consider the use of indemnity forms, which is quite common. And we have to understand that an indemnity form can only be applicable for cases where the facility owners or the facilities themselves or any other party relevant to the excursion are carrying out their responsibilities in such a manner that they cannot be construed as being reckless or to endanger the children that are visiting the facility in a reckless manner. We have to remember that indemnity forms carry no weight if any reckless behavior or actions can be proven. The next challenge that educational institutions face quite regularly and frequently, actually on a daily basis, is the challenge with regards to fire safety and protecting the premises as well as all the individuals on the premises from the potential fires that can exist at the educational institution. As would be the case with any business or any facility where work is taking place, the solution towards fire safety would allude to having the proper procedures, paperwork, including necessary actions to be carried out on a frequent basis. This includes inspections to be carried out on any implement or piece of equipment there to protect the facility or persons from the exposure to a possible fire, making sure that fire drills are carried out on a set frequency, and to make sure that everybody understands the details of the procedures to be carried out within such a fire drill. Other than that, the legislative requirements that are prescribed from every metropolitan area as well as national legislation or the regulations at hand would need to be abided by. Number 5 on the list has to do with infection control. Now, specifically applicable to institutions that have to deal with our most vulnerable individuals, which are our small children, those that are visiting creches as well as primary schools, infection control can become a major challenge. In this regard, we would need to consider sanitation practices as well as protocols for reporting and isolating any cases of infection that may spread quite quickly within the population of the school as well as the community at large. As we may have it at an educational institution such as a primary school or creche, having a robust educational program with regards to the risks related to infection can actually mitigate the possibility of exposure to any possible infection. Before we continue, a big thank you to Safety Wallet for their support to this channel. Safety Wallet is committed to enhancing workplace safety, including the educational sector, with their comprehensive subscription packages for businesses of any size. Safety Wallet helps implement robust safety measures to ensure continual compliance and reward safety improvements. Safety Wallet stands as a beacon of support for organizations striving for a safer tomorrow. For more information, visit www.safetywallet.co.za or click on the link in the description box below. The sixth topic that we mentioned with regards to the challenges faced by educational institutions on a daily basis when it comes to health and safety is that of manual handling of equipment or any article in question. Now, the ergonomics here is naturally the factor that one would need to consider, therefore the weight and proportions of the elements that we are trying to move relative to the person that are actually performing the tasks. In this regard, it is necessary to make sure that we examine or at least look at what the activity is that we'll be carrying out, and should the piece of equipment or element that we're trying to move from one place to another be too heavy or have proportions that are unnatural and is something that we're not usually carrying out, that we need to reconsider how we will be moving this element or piece of furniture or equipment from one location to the other. Naturally, just like with any other health and safety components within a health and safety program or system, the necessary training would need to be provided to the individuals that will be carrying out these tasks or activities on a regular basis. Number 7 on the list has to do with stress management. Now, believe it or not, teaching or educating young individuals may become stressful, especially in cases where you have overcrowded classrooms or you have deadlines that you would need to adhere to, whilst other responsibilities or activities such as cultural activities and sports activities are also looming over your head. In this case, it's necessary to have a robust or secure reporting structure so that individuals can feel safe when they would like to report things like burnout or stress that is affecting not only their mental health but also their work performance. Second to this, the suggestion would be to have a counselor or a person that is responsible for providing counseling to the individuals or staff or faculty members so that they can overcome these stresses in a more effective manner. Lastly, the use of awareness campaigns can adjust or mitigate the risk or exposure towards stresses and things like burnout effectively if individuals know how to identify the signs of these stresses or things like burnout effectively, and therefore would be able to report and address them adequately. Next on the list is traffic management. Now, as we know, managing traffic or the movement of vehicles and people around an institution where education is taking place is usually a major challenge. Liaising with the Metro Police and other metropolitan stakeholders is vital in this regard. With that being said, providing safe drop-off zones and pick-up points for parents and other individuals can go a long way. Lastly, it is suggested that an educational program also be implemented, especially with very young children, so that they can understand the dangers or hazards or risks related to the movement of traffic and people in the same space. Number 9 on the list has to do with violence and aggression. Now, naturally, dealing with the behaviors, especially that of young children or young individuals, is a very daunting and difficult task. In this regard, it's really important to foster and grow a culture within the educational institution or school, which considers respect and mutual respect as one of the highest aspirations for the individuals that are attending the institution itself. Further to this, having anti-bullying programs and counseling programs for the children or the individuals attending the institution can also be beneficial. At the end of the day, it's about managing the behaviors of the individuals that are all attending the school, working back towards the culture that the institution or school is presenting to the community. Last but not least on the list of challenges faced by educational institutions is working at heights. Now, even if it is changing a light bulb or simply having to climb onto an object to be able to reach something that's quite high up, we may need to consider when working at heights is actually a task that needs to be considered for the use of certain elements such as PPE or working at heights equipment, or other protocols that would need to be considered, such as the necessary inspection to be carried out or risk assessment to be carried out, to implement the necessary control measures for working at heights to be taken seriously or to be carried out safely. Each of these challenges, although they are distinct and quite different in nature from one to the next, is something that would need to be considered or be thought of in terms of the health and safety management system that would need to be implemented at the place of education as a complete solution towards all of the challenges faced collectively. Having a sound health and safety management system, such as the PPP system offered by Safety Wallet, brings these solutions to multiple educational institutions currently. Having these solutions in place would go a long way for not only resolving the 10 issues which we've discussed today, but it will also go a long way with regards to your health and safety system from a holistic point of view. We have to remember, however, that implementing a health and safety management system is not only about the paperwork or the ticking exercises that we have to go through. It's about changing the way that people see health and safety, the way that they experience health and safety, and therefore the way that they think and talk about health and safety in general. That goes towards the change or cultivation of a health and safety culture in the workplace. That's it for this video. Again, thank you very much to Safety Wallet for making this video and its content possible. We do appreciate your support. Until next time, stay safe, stay inspired, and take care.